Hey y'all, Zach McDonald, your real estate agent with Real Property Associates, and this video is going to be titled Best Places to Buy in the Seattle metro area. People frequently ask me where the best places to buy are, and I think that's a fair question if you're somebody who is new to the area, if you are buying your first house and you're starting to think and plan for the future. What's it going to look like in 5-10 years? If I buy this house right now, where am I going to get the most bang for my buck? Maybe that's the most important thing. Where am I going to see the most appreciation? Where am I going to see my money grow the most? Where am I going to enjoy being and want to be in 10 to 15 years? I think those are all really fair questions, and they're all kind of tied up in this, where's the best place to buy a house? As I think about this question, there are lots of different factors that are beyond just where price is going to go up the most. People start to think about schools, they start to think about transportation, they start to think about proximity to work, they think about parks. There are many, many things that you could start adding to this list of what might cause a specific area to appreciate or be more desirable in the future. Some of it's easy to predict, and a lot of it's really hard to predict. I don't think a lot of people predicted that Kirkland was going to blow up after Microsoft got over there, but it did. But previously, Kirkland wasn't much in comparison to Seattle and a lot of the other suburbs. But as we look at it now, we think, oh, how did we miss that? How do we not know that was going to happen? So as we're starting to think about this question, we can look at the data today, and we can also start to think about, okay, what are people doing and thinking about, and what's important to people now that might not have used to be important, and what does that map to as a trend for the future? So in this video, I want to talk about some of the areas I think that are going to continue to grow and appreciate. And as a general rule, I think the region, the Seattle area, is going to continue appreciating and be a place that people want to live. But I'll do my best to highlight some specific areas for you to focus on if that's something that's really important to you. As we start this video, I want to talk about Seattle itself, the city of Seattle, because in the past few years, the city of Seattle has been growing at a rapid pace. But we've seen that change and shift here in the recent year and a half since COVID. And in Seattle, over the last year, we've seen a 5.6% growth in home prices. And that's the median sales price for houses in Seattle. And that was $861,000. So a pretty good number and large compared to many places in the US. But if we look at the growth that we've seen in other places in the metro area, it's not even close in comparison. If we look at the east side, we're seeing 20% or more in many places. If we look at the suburbs on the north side, we're seeing 20% or more in most places. And if we look at the south end, on the other side of Seattle and Bellevue, we're seeing 20% or more in most places. So the trend right now over the last year or so has been people moving out of the city where you have smaller lots, you have older houses, not necessarily conducive to separate spaces or work from home situations or larger backyards where you want to stay and hang out at your house if you're stuck there. Now those trends won't necessarily last forever, but it's been and will continue to be a trend, I believe, that we'll see more and more people working from home and more of the hybrid workspaces and work cultures as time continues to progress. Partly because that's what people want, and also because technology continues to provide opportunities to keep connectivity and maintain culture, but also give a little bit more freedom and flexibility. So I think we're gonna see a transition back to the office someday. Maybe you're watching this video at a later point and that's already happened, but I think we'll see a continued push towards people being back together in person to some degree, but I also think we'll maintain this work from home culture. So I think it continues to lend itself towards being outside of the city core, which is where a lot of the growth was towards the city. I think we're gonna see more and more people open to the suburbs again, and specifically some of those areas where you can get a newer house, a little bit more space. And so in Seattle area, the metro area, that's not in the city. The city of Seattle is a large city or geographic area on our map in comparison to the rest of the cities, but you also have a lot smaller lots, really old houses in a lot of places, and they just don't work very well for some of the creature comforts, if you want to call it that people are looking for these days. So if we want to focus our attention towards the east side, I think the east side of Lake Washington is going to be an area where we're going to continue to see growth. I think some cities like Bellevue, where you have one of the highest prices in King County, places like Mercer Island that are more exclusive, not very large, but highly desirable, those places are going to continue to see growth because of their exclusivity and just the fact that people want to be there. I think you're going to see growth in places around those areas too. So if we're looking at data, we're seeing things like 24.2% year-over-year growth in Redmond for single-family homes. Okay, that's where Microsoft is currently located, and you also have proximity to Bellevue and the rest of the east side. You've also got 25.6% growth in Sammamish, a little farther out, but still not too far out. 37.2% growth in Issaquah year over year, a little bit on the south side of Bellevue. And if we're going to look at Snoqualmie, even farther out, 24.5%. So lots and lots of growth in and around Bellevue. We're also seeing a lot of growth on the south end. So if you're going to go past Seattle and Bellevue and you're going to go past Renton essentially, so you're past Lake Washington, you start to hit places like Black Diamond and Kent and Maple Valley and Auburn and Burien if you're on the west side first. All of these areas are seeing close to or greater than 20% over previous year's numbers. So a lot of people have been moving to these places. If we're looking at Des Moines or we're looking at Burien, these are older areas as well, but more affordable. And that's been part of the push as well. People that are buying their first home or trying to purchase and can't afford to be in some of these higher priced areas, they are being pushed out into the fringes, if you want to call it that, but they're being pushed out of some of the more desirable areas, at least historically, so that they can buy their first house or buy a house and take advantage of some of these crazy price growth trends. And so those areas are older. If you head a little farther south, you'll see a lot more newer homes in places like Covington or Maple Valley or Auburn or Kent. There's a lot more newer construction, so if people like the smaller, and they are usually smaller lots, but newer houses, they're going to find those on the south end. The east side, where we were just talking, is where you're going to find bigger lots, bigger houses, a lot more grand of scale, but you're also going to be paying quite a bit more for those houses. For some perspective, if you're looking down south and you're looking at Kent, median sales price in Kent last month was $612,000, and the median sales price in Auburn was $600,000. If we look at some of the other places that I mentioned on the east side of the lake, you're looking at $1.455 million in Sammamish. You're looking at $1.365 in Redmond. You're looking at almost $1.3 million in Issaquah. So quite a bit more expensive as you get closer into Bellevue and closer into Seattle, and quite a bit more affordable as you get to the south end. Another place that I think you're going to continue to see growth in prices in the Seattle area is going to be on the north end, and that's going to be mainly Snohomish County and some small sections of King County that are north of Bellevue and Seattle. As we start talking about the north end, I have to say Kirkland probably should have been mentioned on the east side, but what the heck, it's kind of in between as you start to head north. Kirkland's a great place, and I think we're going to continue to see growth there as it's close to Seattle, it's also close to Bellevue, and relatively newer, so to speak. There's a lot of demand and a push towards Kirkland, so I think Kirkland should have been mentioned on the east side just because it's generally lumped in there, but it is still on the north side of Bellevue, so we'll go along with that. But I think when I think of the north end, I'm thinking of places like Shoreline, Lake Forest Park, Kenmore, that are just directly touching, and even parts of Bothell in King County, touching the Seattle-Bellevue area. I think all of those places are going to continue to appreciate, and that's mainly because they're just close to the city centers. But generally speaking, those areas are a little bit older, and so they have some of the same characteristics that you're going to see when you get closer to the city, outside of Bothell, maybe where you'll get a little bit more of a lot size and some newer, bigger houses. But as you push farther north in Snohomish County, as you get to places like Edmonds, my hometown, or you get up farther towards Linwood, or even continue pushing to Everett, Mill Creek, or beyond, you're going to start to see some of the newer, more modern, I mean, let's not call them modern. 80s and 90s isn't particularly modern, but you're going to start to see newer, bigger houses that have ensuite bathrooms and walk-in closets and pantries. Those weren't features that you were seeing in older houses. You'll also see offices and bonus rooms. So those are going to be houses that are particularly going to be a little bit farther north and also on the east side, like I mentioned. So in the older houses, you're not going to find many of those things, maybe if they were added on. But if you're looking for some of those things in a house, you're going to be looking a little bit farther north. If we're looking for new construction, which is still a really popular thing, and I think always will be popular for many reasons, there isn't a lot of new construction in near the city or even the close suburbs. We're starting to see new construction pushing out. So we talked about the south end. There's quite a bit of new construction on the south end, and we're seeing quite a bit of construction even farther on the north end, north of Everett. So places like Arlington and Marysville and Lake Stevens, these places are all seeing new construction and also a lot of growth, and mainly for the same reasons that we're seeing it on the south end. It is a lot more affordable. So again, we can compare places like Arlington at just under $600,000 for median sales price, but almost 20% growth year over year. If we look at Lake Stevens came in at $650,000 for the median sales price, up 26.2% year over year, so lots of growth. Places like Granite Falls, $580,000, up 34.1%. So lots and lots of growth in Granite Falls. But these are all places where there's room to build too. Larger lots, even acreage, where some of the larger builders are purchasing land and developing new neighborhoods. And you're seeing this trend even outside of Snohomish County as you continue to head north. But I think if you're looking for where are people going and what are people looking for, there is a push away from the city core because there can be. And I think the work from home trend is a big part of that. I think people starting to think through what's most important to them and some of those factors in a house, that those things have changed. And so that's partly why I think we've had such a big push towards the suburbs. And I think we'll continue to see that here in the coming years. Not that Seattle itself is not going to continue to appreciate and grow, and there are still lots and lots of benefits to being closer into the city, and there are reasons that people love being in Seattle. And a lot of that has to do with the parks and being in walkable neighborhoods and being able to get to downtown easily. And those things aren't going to change. They aren't. But there are also reasons why people are starting to look outside of the city, and that's causing a lot of growth in some of these outlying areas. So if you're thinking about where am I going to see the most growth here in my investment over the next 5, 10, 15 years, I think you're going to continue to see a lot of benefit in being in the east side. So we're talking about Redmond, Sammamish, Kirkland, threw it in there this time, Bellevue, Issaquah, all of that region, Woodinville. I think you're going to continue to see a lot of growth on the north end in places like Edmonds, Linwood, Everett. Maybe not quite as dramatic, maybe as on the east side, but at a lot more affordable price point. We're talking about almost half the price to be on the north end. Edmonds, $858, okay? It's a lot like Seattle. So the Snohomish County market is a lot more affordable, but just as close. And South King County as well, I think is going to be a great place to target in the future going forward. So lots and lots of places where you could benefit from a purchase of a home, and where I think long term you're going to start to see and continue to see appreciation. And as I'm looking at data and digesting it, most of the places are appreciating at about the same rate. What it comes down to, though, is how much money you have to invest. So if you have larger amounts and it's more important for you to be in a place that feels nicer and newer and more luxurious, then you're going to look in a different place. But if you have a limited amount of resources, or you have different things that are important to you, you may target a different part of the metro area. But all in all, most of the area is appreciating at a very similar rate outside of the city of Seattle. So I think anywhere in the region in general is going to be a safe bet. But if you want to talk more specifically about your situation and you have questions about what each area and each city provides, I'm happy to be a resource for you. I've lived in many of these places myself personally, or have close family and friends that live there and clients that live there. So I'm happy to be a resource and talk more about your situation when the time comes. Thanks so much for watching this video about where to buy in the Seattle metro